Okay, now that we have finished the client side, it's time that we create our server side, which will apparently would be a program, which would be a socket which is bound to an IP address and listen to a port number in the same interface or all interfaces in the same system. And as I said, because I want this course to be less than 2 hours, so and because I want it to be available free on the Udemy, so I would just copy paste the client side to the server side and explain the differences. So in here I press Ctrl X and Y to save, hit enter and say copy socket.c to maybe server socket.c and hit enter. Now I say nano server socket.c, and this would be our server. First of all, we have created the socket saved in A. We have created the address structure in ADDR. Any means all the interfaces in this system, and now after that we would want to just cut all these lines, and in here we have created another integer, so we want to bind our socket with a specific IP address and listen to a port number. So I go in here and press Q and say man, first of all man bind and hit enter. Now it says when a socket is created with socket, it exists in the namespace or address family but has no address assigned to it. So bind assigns the address specified by ADDR to the socket, referred to by the file descriptor. ADDR len specifies the size in bytes of the address structure pointed to by ADDR. So like connect that we connected to the address structure in here also, even though the socket that we have created is in the address family of AF_INET, but in here, or IPv4, in here I want to just assign the IP address, so this address structure would be passed to the bind. But the interesting thing is here is that both bind and connect are the same, get the same argument. So if I press Ctrl Shift and T and say man connect and hit enter, you could see that connect gets 4 arguments. They are absolutely the same thing. You see, first an integer, which is the file descriptor of the socket, then the struct pointed to socket ADDR, and then we have the length of it. So in here, I think I shouldn't have just deleted the connect. Again, I say Ctrl X and no, so that it wouldn't be saved. And in here, I just cut all these lines in here. So now we just change the connect to bind. The rest of the things are exactly the same. So you see, first the file descriptors of the socket in A, then the struct which passed the MGH address, which is this address structure, and then the size of this address structure. Okay, after the bind in here, now we need to listen. So I press Ctrl Shift and T and say man listen in here and hit enter. So we want to listen to that port, right? So listen marks the socket referred to by sockfd. You see, it takes 2 arguments as a passive socket. That is, as a socket that will be used to accept incoming connection request using accept. So we want the socket A to exactly listen to act as a passive that is not able to send and receive data. It just listen to incoming connections. After the listen, we would accept the connection. So when the socket is listening and we get request from the client, we would have the accept, and the accept output would be another socket which would be active, and by using that active socket returned from the accept system call, you would be able to send and receive data. So sockfd is the file descriptor that refers to the socket, and the backlog argument, which is the second argument, defines the maximum length to which queue of pending connections for sockfd may grow. So it could listen to if a connection request arrives when the queue is full, the client may receive an error. So right, it could listen up to the number that we specify. So in here we go to the server socket and we say listen. So the first argument, again if you look, is the file descriptor A, and the second would be a number, let's say 5. Now we could look at the rest of the manual to see the minimum and maximum values, but it says 0 is returned, so it will be an integer if it is successful and -1 if it's not. So after that you would want to accept connections. Again, Control Shift and T, man, and now accept. So now man accept, hit enter, and if you look, it says the accept command instructs the printing system to accept print jobs. So actually this is not accept, this is something else. So let's see what is the accept. Let me go to here, and if we look in the listen, it says accept to. I think we should say man accept to and hit enter. No, let me check again. It definitely has some manual, but apparently it's not in here. Let me say man accept to, just like that. No, we don't have that too. So let me just bring up the manual page. Yes, this is the accept in the browser, but I think we should type this. You see in the URL, I don't know if you could see it, but in the URL in here we have accept.to. So if I say man accept.to, yes, now we have the accept. So it says the accept system call is used with connection-based socket types. It extracts the first connection request on the queue of pending connections for the listening socket, creates a new connected socket, and returns a new file descriptor referring to that socket. So it's completely self-explanatory. As I said, the listen would just listen to incoming connections, and the socket would be passive, just listening to connections, and then the accept would cause that those connections that have been listening to and the first one would be accepted, and the output would be another file descriptor. So another, as you see, the output is it returns an integer, so this integer would be a file descriptor of the resulting socket. So another socket would be created using which we could send and receive data, as I explained. So in here it takes some argument. First argument would be socketfd, which is the file descriptor of the passive socket, which is actually listening to incoming connections, and then we have the struct, which the address structure which we have created, and after that we have the sock len addr len, and we have some flags. So if we look in here, so if we look at the explaining in here, it says the argument is a pointer to a socket addr structure. This structure is filled in with the address of the peer socket as known to the communications layer. Well, it's not mandatory for our use. It just says if addr is null, we could pass its size would be null, and we could pass null for both of them. So we go in our file, and for our purpose in here, we just say accept and pass the first argument, which is the file descriptor of the socket, then 20 for the rest. Again, let me just check. Yes, I think this would be right. And also I want it to be equal to something because it returns a file descriptor which would be an integer, and you won't use it to send and receive data. So I create, say, int, and create another integer. Let's name it d, and then, or just we could just say c, like the client side. So I haven't used c like the connect. Let me check. No. Okay, accept this, and after the accept, now we have accepted, and then, well, we would say c is equal to accept. So again, a brief overview: we created the socket, we created the address structure, we bind our socket with this structure in here, we listen to incoming connections, up to 5 connections. The last socket is passive, it cannot send and receive data, so we use the one of the requesting connections coming through us. We should accept that, right? Because we can't use the last socket to send and receive data, so we would accept it, and the output would be a file descriptor because a new socket has been created which you could use to send and receive data. Now we could use C to send and receive data, so in the next lecture you would use it to send the data because the client is receiving some data using the receive system call.